Mr. Maj Toure, welcome to the Wolf and Iron podcast. Great to finally talk to you, man. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Good to be seen, man. Some people, unfortunately, are not seen anymore. So
That's right. That's right. We'll talk a little bit about your ons and offs of Instagram, how you've been getting kicked off. Before we started recording, I was telling you, I think I followed you probably, it's been over a year ago now, I think. And this shirt, you guys who are listening to the podcast, you can't see the shirt, but I'm wearing one of Maj's shirt. It basically says, make politicians afraid again. Yeah. And I saw Ethan Suplee wearing this shirt, and I thought, dude, that looks awesome. It looks better on him than it does me, but still, I said, I got to get that shirt. So I bought it, and then that's how I got connected with you. And then through that time, I've seen you, getting booted off Instagram and all that. But for the guys who don't know you, who haven't been following you, give us a little bit of your backstory and then how you got to doing what you're doing now.
I'm a Philadelphian, born and raised in Philly, in North Philadelphia. Just pretty much, you're exposed to the things that your environment tells you, initially, until you start finding other environments. But generally, man, I started to see these things, that just seemed weird to me. So, I made music. And I would, everybody when they're growing up in America, like in the movie Fight Club, when Brad Pitt's character says, we're raised to believe that we're going to be television and rock stars, and we're slowly finding out that we're not going to be, and we're all very upset about it. So, as a teenager, you want to make music, all of the things that you're passionate about, you want to do and you want to be recognized for. So I made music. I've always made music that was very political or social in origin. I never made dumb music. And so I would travel around and I would go to different places. I would press up, 500 CDs and go to LA and hit their trains and sell the music, develop relationships, do the same thing in Detroit, do the same thing. In Philadelphia, I used to take the Chinatown bus and go to New York every morning. I would be on the 7:00 bus going to New York. And by 9:00, I was there. And my goal was I would sell 30 or 40 CDs and I would get on the 3:00 train back to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I would, sell trains at by 5:00, on the rush hour. My point, though, is you develop all of these relationships with people and you go back to that city and you'll see what happened to Steve? What happened to Kurt? What happened to whoever? Oh, they got a gun charge. And this is different cities.
Yeah.
And it would be like, well, damn, who did he shoot? Who did he rob? But he didn't shoot and rob anybody. He just had a gun. And it's like, what? And then after a while, you kind of like, yo, this is crazy. This is happening. The same thing happened to my friend in Detroit. The same thing happened to my friend in Texas. And then you just I started to see that this is not a oops. This is a highly organized phenomenon to get people to not have the means to protect themselves, or at least convince them that they shouldn't have that means. And so, rewind a bit. When I was in high school before this, I used to sell weed in high school. And sometimes if there was no money in school, I would leave and I would get blasted and I would take tours of City Hall. First of all, there's a bunch of tours in Philadelphia. There's a lot of history with Philadelphia. So I would get absolutely blasted and take tours to these places. Like I would take tours of City Hall. I would take tours of the Mason building, which is on the northeast entrance of City Hall. I would just go to these places and baffled by damn, all of this history in this city. Like William Penn was, oh man, he was something else. But nonetheless, I had an understanding of, you take these tours of places like Constitution, Independence Hall with a Constitution sign, you're going to get some seep in of the Constitution and, this overarching theme. So fast forward a bit, I'm like, man, well, I thought the Second Amendment thing was kind of like the law of the land. And seeing that it was complete bullshit and how now knowing these are unconstitutional statutes, I just knew that I could answer some of these questions. So we did an event in 2015 going into 2016's election. And it was supposed to be one event. It was supposed to be Black Guns Matter, because, Black Lives Matter was the thing at the time. And I'm like, well, shit, I agree that Black life matters, but what if we don't have the means to defend ourselves, or if we don't really understand how to apply these lessons and know the rules of each state, this is even before we talking about unconstitutional,
Yeah.
then you're going to send people to jail. And we saw this a bunch of times. So for me, it was like, let's do an event. And then people just came from all over the place. I mean, like Jersey, Brooklyn, to a Philly class. And I just was like, man, everybody's like, yo, you got to tell me how to like really get busy. And how do I do this? And I'm like, bro, you live in a whole different locality. So, the snowball effect, you start doing a thing, people feel it, you try to do it again. And we had this bright idea of going like, yo, what if we do 13 cities, like the first 13 colonies?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And let's raise 25 grand on, at the time, GoFundMe, and let's do it. And we just kept going. And every time we would get to the end of the road, right, people would be like, I remember the first 13 cities, people really started emailing us like, yo, that's fucked up. You didn't come to our town. You don't care about small cities. And I'm like, bro, we just did 13 cities. And they're like, yeah, but you did a big city. You didn't do Little Rock. And I'm just like, all right. So we would keep tweeting like, yo, do y'all think we should keep going? And it just kept snowballing. I mean, so like we went from a $25,000 goal. And again, we raise the money and give it away as we do the classes, right?
Yeah.
For venues and whatever. We went from that to now like $1 million goal. And we're at, I think maybe like $530,000 raised. I mean, we've been off of GoFundMe and on to Gibson Go. But my point in all of this is I'm just a dude from Philly that used to get high and understand the Constitution and things like that from a very personal level, because it was my city. And these were places that people in Philly, like people that live in Boston don't go to Cheers. Like,
yeah.
And so people in Philly generally don't go to City Hall. We don't go to Independence Hall. We don't go to the Rocky Steps. Like, it's just, that's for the tourists. But when you really take a moment and study the history of any individual city that you're in, each city, especially major cities, have a very unique history.
Mm-hmm.
And so juxtaposing that with the bullshit that I was dealing with my friends in regards to they catching cases for like possession of a firearm, it was like, nah, we can solve this. And so it just kept snowballing and kept snowballing. And here we are years later, with a building for the Solutionary Center, still teaching firearms classes, evolving from Democrat to Republican to Libertarian to, I'm definitely going in the direction of ANCAT. Like that's the evolution. But that's in a nutshell, in a roundabout way. That's my backstory in relation to how Black Guns Matter, the Solutionary Lifestyle and the Solutionary Center came to be.
That's awesome. There's a lot of takeaways just from that. One, I wish there was like a video, like a security cam footage of you as a teen going through like City Hall, just totally blasted, but yet like absorbing all this stuff. How awesome would that be? And, but not only that, but at the same time, it's like, look, the Constitution was written in such a way so that it was simple enough so that even if somebody was just high as a kite, they could still be moved by it. There's really no excuse for, what's going on with the politicians and all that. It hasn't been an excuse for a long time. Like it's very clear we have a right to bear arms. And yet, there's just constantly either more restrictions being put in place or more talks of restrictions being put in place.
Yeah, these guys, I struggled with that for a while. I used to be like, damn, do these guys, like most politicians are, close to our age or maybe a little like most of Congress are like not really old. Like, they're like under Thomas Massey, and Thomas Massey hasn't been there for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
But which means they're around the same, they're in their 30s, 40s, right? Mm-hmm. They're aware. They're aware because of the information age, but I used to always struggle with, I know that they're aware because of access to information, but they also grew up in the era where civics was being removed from schools. So I would always struggle with like, maybe they just really, really don't know. You know what I'm saying? And just based on, again, most of my peer group didn't know. They were like, when I would go there and I'm like, yo, do you know about this dude named fucking Benjamin Banneker that like made DC, like this Black dude that like was the architect of DC and certain portions of Philadelphia? And they're like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Like what she was down at Independence Hall again. And so like the thirst, when you hear these stories, like I always was like a fan of like I remember watching like as a youngin, my uncle would show me this movie called Clash of the Titans, like the original one.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would be like, oh shit. Like these stories of these, like these beings, these humans, these demigods, those stories always resonated with me. Comic books always resonated with me, right? The stories. I mean, this is all we have really is stories. And
Yeah.
are you telling your story? Are you making up a story? Whatever. All of the things that like people art like and gets turned into billions of dollars, like the Star Wars franchise is the juggernaut, you know? And so these stories of these people fighting, like Frederick Douglass's story, you know, Marcus Garvey's story,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even like the story of like, it's Christmas Eve, and fucking George Washington and them dudes like took a boat across a river to go murder the ops. Like, that's a story like, oh shit, they didn't even have motors. Like they was fucking like, we got to go over there and kill these
Like
dudes. You
busting
know
up
what
the
I'm
ice while they're rowing,
saying?
and
Yeah.
trying to be quiet
These
and
dudes
not
was
freeze
like
to death.
moving through a slushy quietly to go kill the bad guys. And so like
Yeah.
that story is always something that's like, oh shit. And so those things were always very like intriguing to me, you know? And then after a while, you start to see the government overreach, it's not a different story. This is gonna sound like really like weird and fucking spooky, right? But like we are in the same story.
Hmm.
Like it's just not Britain this time. It's like your own. It's an enemy domestic now. It's the same human story. It's the same like haters out here. Like in the Bible, like Cain was the original hater.
Mm-hmm.
Killed his brother Abel, like just because like, oh, God's gonna like his offering better than mine. We got to kill him. Like that's envy. That's hate. These are the same human stories. And so for me, it was always bugged out to me that people wouldn't identify or understand the story because one, it wasn't exposed to them. So these politicians, that lack of thirst for the story and being the hero in the story, because the heroes get the shit beat out of them. Like the villains are generally like cool up until the end where the hero wins, right? But them not knowing the civics, and then after a while, I started to shift to like, nah. At this point, you kind of like know the information because everybody on Twitter is telling you like, that's not how this goes. This is the story, and now it's just like they absolutely know. And if you don't know, then that means you're ignorant. And if you're ignorant, you're still not fit to serve, you know? And so I've made peace with that concept. Like they either know, which most of them do, and they're just doing their own thing. They are the part of the story that the founders of this nation told us about. It was like, hey, watch out for this. Like there'll be a centralized money supply. Like, don't do that. These guys are that. That's the Fed, right? You remember like in school, you would read those books that like, if you want to do this, turn to page 12.
Yeah.
You want to do this,
choose your own adventure type of stuff.
Yeah. And it's like, these guys are clearly, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, which part of the story does each one of these new characters represent? Okay, yeah, you know, like Biden is a more senile version of the character, the chancellor from V for Vendetta. That's who Biden is. He just doesn't have the wherewithal to be as vicious, openly. You know, fucking Dick Cheney and those guys are like the invisible, like super evil guys that no one even really sees. Like in all of the villains, all of the movies, right? The bad guy usually is like a philanthropist and everybody like likes him until, you know, so it's just these stories and the American story when you read it, you know, like right now I'm reading a lot of, I mean, everybody's read The Law by Bastiat, right? but this is an easy read, right? But this Bastiat is a different, economic sophisms of what is seen and what is not seen. And this is like the collected works of Bastiat. My point in saying that is getting these stories about these revolutionary gentlemen and gentle ladies from all around world history is just, it's like movies to me. And so we're in the movie. We're in the, you choose your adventure. Which person do you want to be? Which character do you want to be? And that's based on your choice from moment to moment. And I think that these politicians have just made their choice. Their choice is they just want to be collaborators with the fucking Decepticons. And you know what I'm saying? So they've made their choice, and we've made our choices to be the patriots fighting with the Autobots to, stop fucking Megatron. And I know I'm throwing a lot of nerd shit out there.
No, I love it. I think it's great. And and the thing is, though, is that you're right. All the movies we watch, my wife and I and my son, we watched the latest Jurassic Park last night.
Was that good? The one with all of the Jurassic Park people together?
I would say it's good. It's a fun flick. Nothing replaces the original. Yeah. And there's a lot of plot holes in it. Just don't think too much about it. Just go into it, just wanting to see dinosaurs.
Suspend your disbelief. Right?
Yeah, you'll be fine there. But of course, the bad guy, is the mega corporation. And in almost every movie we watch, the bad guy is either, some slimy politician. It's a mega corporation. It's the media. It's the whatever. And every American buys into that and goes, of course they are, because they have tremendous amount of power. It's unchecked. But then when we introduce the same scenarios, like in real life, they go, no, I think I'm going to trust them. I'm going to trust all of them. And you're like, how is it? I think as Americans, one of the things that we should have just in our blood at this point is just that we don't trust the government. And if we could just be on not that we don't need some aspects of the government perhaps, but the fact that we just look at them constantly with a great deal of suspicion that they're not out for our best interest. I think we would see the left and the right kind of disappear, and we'd become once again Americans that actually, think about ourselves independently instead of, right. You know what I mean?
That's the next phase of where I'm going to try to direct people. Like I'm even trying to get certain nomenclature out of and it's difficult, getting certain nomenclature out of my lexicon, right? Mm-hmm. So like not even saying Democrat or Republican. Just like almost expressing the policy and explaining how the policy is bad, and almost like don't mention if they Democrat or Republican, right? And it's a difficult thing, but it's becoming easier because there's so many rhinos. Mm-hmm. And it's like there's so many people that are pretending to be conservative that don't understand. I beat up on this guy a lot, man. Brandon Tatum.
Yeah, I was wondering about what you're going to say about him.
Yeah, he's an absolute fucking clown. However, he's indicative of the lack of intelligence, this lack of civic intelligence that America generally suffers from currently, right? So you can get up there and say thin blue line. I can say conservative, this, that, and the third. But if you do any study, you know that America was founded on fuck the police, and at least overreaching police. We're not saying I'm a fan of law enforcement officers that are like, I'm putting on my uniform, I'm putting my gun on, I'm putting my badge on because we're going to fucking protect the community today, bro. We're going to these rapists, these robbers, and these killers, not on my fucking watch. Those guys and women, I salute them all day. But the guys that are hiding behind a tree on the highway to see me doing 3 miles over the speed limit so they can generate revenue for the state, fuck you all day. That's not you. And so those people that don't understand the full understanding and context of what America was supposed to be and what we can be again, they do the cheat code of just going the left is saying fuck the police. So I'm an American. I'm going to say the police are great. Well, are they great when they fucking let 19 children stand there in 77 minutes and let a weirdo murder 19 babies? So I can't champion that. And so there's this milquetoast, bottom feeder, I'm just pandering to my base or my donors thing that has been highlighted so much in the so-called conservative, and even to be honest, as a libertarian, some libertarian circles, that it's a part of our mission to highlight that is not the way, and it's not American. It is in no way, shape, or form. John Adams, Thomas Paine. I could go through again. We can go all the way back to the John Locke's and the Bastiats. These guys that are about revolution and recognize that limited government was the best type of government, if any was needed. That's even before we get to anarchists that are like, Spooner and all of that. But my point is, there's a need to call out things that are pretending as if they're for the betterment of Americans, but these people don't even know what it means to be American.
Yeah,
that's a big thing. And if me, the black dude that has come to grips with slavery and fucking the indigenous people being murdered and understanding that this concept, both of those can exist in that same space. And, for me, I call out those contradictions all of the time. Thomas Jefferson might have had the best pen in the universe, but he had a huge contradiction. You was writing this as you owned humans. Yeah. And I think we have to say that and say, no, these men were flawed. And that's why we got to make sure we're on our current, leadership, because they're flawed too. But that doesn't mean that his pen wasn't great and the Declaration of Independence isn't fire. It's fucking fire. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights as written, are amazing documents. And even if you don't bang with America right now, shit, if you Black Lives Matter and are calling for the end of America, you could still benefit from that Constitution and the Bill of Rights. You'd actually get more of the things that you're asking for if you held these so-called public servants to the contract. You know what I'm saying? But nobody reads it. We listen to these goofballs like Tatum that just say this drivel, that say, I back the blue no matter what. That back the blue no matter what, it sounds to me just like when Democrats say vote blue no matter who. It's the same goofy shit. No different than libertarians pretending, like Nick Sarwark, used to be the, chairman of the Libertarian National Party. Complete clown. And not saying that these men, I'm not disrespecting them as humans. I'm disrespecting them deliberately because they lack the thing that they're pretending that they are. And our people need real men and women that are willing to stand up for what's right. And I'm not saying that we need more leadership. I'm saying we just need more men and women that's willing to stand up for right. So some of these people will manipulate that. Again, our peer group or our age group generally doesn't understand anything about civics. They'll manipulate that for this like pet rally, absolute nothing. For all of that, just go be a Democrat. That's the AOC vibe. You know what I'm saying? And so our people need genuine, understanding and facts and objectivity. And that's the part that I hope that I'm bringing to, even whether it's with Black Guns Matter or other things. I hope that people understand that when I'm calling out the left and calling out the right, it's because I'm actually American as fuck. And the founding fathers didn't want this goofy duopoly shit. It just wasn't. It wasn't a thing. Like George Washington, like damn near on his dying bed was like, hey, bro, don't do fucking parties. Like, just don't do it, dude. Yep. And so, hey, dude, don't do a centralized money supply. Like, don't do it. And then right after dudes is like party and fucking money supply. Like, so just getting our people back to that and not caring about who gets fucking trampled in the way of trying to save the republic, especially if that person is pretending to be conservative or Republican or actually pretending like they're a part of the democratic process. Because I got to get on Democrats too. You guys are pretending like you really are trying to push for the democratic process, but you really just want the state and the shooters for the state to really do your bidding. Yep. And so doing it that way, I do create a lot of fake enemies. They're not real enemies because like they're not gonna fucking do shit to me. However, I hope that people understand that my reason to call out goofies like Nick Sarwark, like fucking Brandon Tatum, like the AOCs, like the Eric Swalwells, like the fucking Maxine Waters. I don't got no picks. If you're not down with the freedom and individual liberty, I have to call that. The problem is it could come off as if I'm trying to be adversarial with everyone. And I'm not. It's just certain so-called leaders in certain spaces. The American people need better. And so, that'll be my cross to bear. But I promise everybody, I'm not like a raging asshole. It's not.
Well, and you don't come across that way, in the videos that you do and stuff like that. At least I don't think. I mean, even when you call people out. And I think the challenge is, like, I don't know Brandon Tatum, and I've heard a little bit about what he has to say with the Uvalde shooting and all that kind of stuff, but I haven't really followed it a whole lot. And so I can't really comment on like whether I agree with him, don't agree with him. I know there's been things in the past where I have agreed with him on. And I think that's the challenge, is like saying, I agree with this person on these things. They're right on this, but on this thing, they're wrong, and not just, saying, oh, well, totally, this guy's an idiot all across the board. You know what I mean?
I think he is an idiot all across the board. I think that, and let me take it just off of him.
Okay.
I think that the allure of, so Black conservative men that were not all the rage 6 years ago, right? We were conservative or even libertarian, right? We were almost like fucking unicorns. And they become kind of like, maybe say in the last, maybe 7 to 10 years, right? You saw more of them, like years ago, we, someone that I respect tremendously is the Reverend Ken Blanchard. He had a podcast and wrote a book called Black Man with a Gun. He was one of the first like Black conservative gun owners, openly gun owners, that like on the national forum. I mean, he had a website even like before the NRA in like the 90s, right? These guys put in work that other people that I don't respect, because they haven't put in the work, they're saying this thing as if there's something that they're not. And I take it offensive to the OGs that never got the shine that they should have. When I hear people now talking about Thomas Sowell, or even take it even further, Walter Williams was from Philly. Walter Williams was a legend, and he was Black. And he was like, and I'm saying Black, not like to whatever, but like this room was like, you aren't supposed to hear about this type of person in this room.
Yeah.
When I hear guys that have none of the study and just do the cliche pep talk, pep rally stuff, that just actually, they say, well, the left is being divisive, and you're actually being divisive because you're repeating things that you haven't really studied. And you're making conservatism be almost like not almost, you're making it a caricature.
Yeah.
I'd say, or taking libertarianism and making a caricature, or even anarchy and making it a caricature. I take offense to that, because the American people, if the actual information of what these ideologies are, and if you agree with some and don't, whatever, in regards to the philosophy, the American public would be far more intelligent, and some of the silly things that are happening you wouldn't be able to pull them off on them. So when I see guys like that, or just generally that are doing things just for the clicks and the likes and not to advance liberty, meanwhile, China, Russia, and insert whatever other boogeyman, these communist socialist situations are gaining power. China's not like weak out here.
Yeah.
And so we need all hands on deck. And when you're ignoring that, it's like stolen honor. It's nothing worse to an actual soldier than somebody that's pretending to be a soldier, or he wasn't in fucking combat, bro. And it's not saying that there's anything wrong with, if you were just keeping the Wi-Fi on, there's a part for everybody in the army. But let's not pretend like you was something that you're not. When you can actually do the work to be like, do the work and actually get on special forces. Like, it's available to you, right?
Yeah.
When I hear guys doing that type of stuff, I equate it very similarly. And I think that is idiotic across the board. I think it is, because here you have these platforms and the internet, and we can spread information so rapidly, but you choose to not highlight ideologies or things that actually empower the people. You choose to say that, now we're talking about the left, you choose to say that everything is racist. And it's like, bro, there's actual real racist shit out here. You're calling because I disagree with you philosophically. You're calling, like, people call me a white supremacist. At this point, it becomes like, it's like, bro, that's idiotic. And so I think we need to start ridiculing these people. And I think they get away with it because, again, the general public, when the American Revolution happened, that's where the 3%ers came from. It was like, look, there'll be a still photo of me saying 3 like this, and somebody will say, this is like the white supremacist. I bullshit you not. Somebody will say, I just did 3. Yeah. Somebody will say, that's the Illuminati white supremacy sign. Anyway, the 3%ers were a thing because there was only, at that time, there was only like 3% of the population that was talking that shit. There was only 3% of the people that was really willing to get busy against Britain and the crown. And I think that now we need more than 3%. We may need 5%, but that comes with changing the culture through education and information about what liberty actually is. But these guys, either through ignorance or through deceit, tend to lean the general public a certain way, knowing or not knowing the full story. And I think that part is really idiotic because you're doing it for your short-term individual gain, but you don't really understand that the people need actual information, context, layered nuance. Yeah. And the time that you're taking to lead people in a direction just for your clicks and your views, even the things that you're gaining from it, while you're doing that, 70% of Chinese students are learning fucking engineering. Yeah. While you're playing around with this red versus blue shit, America is like 38%, like 38th in like math and science. Like our infrastructure is fucked, like bridges, and you're just pointing the finger at Joe Biden, but you're not locally getting your community involved and educated to make sure that it almost is impossible for Joe Biden to even get there. Yeah.
So basically another mouthpiece, out there, just mouthpieces going against mouthpieces. And I had to stop following like PragerU, which, once again, they got a lot of good stuff, but I'm like, I wouldn't know about half of the nonsense in the world if they didn't just turn around and just find, look what this crazy liberal did. Let's talk about that. Like, why don't you actually teach me? And they do sometimes, but teach me more about positive things. Yeah. Rather than, and I understand that's, that's not popular or whatever, but it's kind of goes back to what you're saying about definitions and stuff. Like when people just throw out the lines of back to blue or, Blue Lives Matter, same as Black Lives Matter, same as I'm proud to be an American. Well, what do you actually mean by that? Like, what does that mean? Like, right. A few weeks ago or however long ago it was now when Roe v. Wade got overturned and got pushed back to the states. And I simply said, look, you may not agree with, you may have a different opinion about abortion than I do, but every American worth their salt should be thankful that the greatest government on the planet just said, whoops, we overstepped our bounds. This belongs to you guys. And then we can figure out how to handle it. But we should all be celebrating that that actually happened, right? And, Bro, and people don't get it.
The Dred Scott decision was when the Supreme Court said, white men have no rights, black men have no rights that white men are bound to respect. That was a Supreme Court that was the opinion. Yeah. They got it wrong. Later on, they were like, holy shit, we got that wrong. That's wrong. Dude, what were y'all doing? Was everybody absolutely high? And so sometimes the Supreme Court gets it wrong. Now, not only does the general public, going back to that civics thing, they don't know the process. They don't know what the systems of checks and balances are and for. Now, does that mean if the Supreme Court, we gave a brief on the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association for the overturning of New York State's ruling in regards to you can't carry a gun on your person, right? We did a little bit of help there, right? I don't live in New York, but that one fell in our favor. The reality is, if it would have went the other way, I'm still going to carry a gun in New York. I had got arrested in Buffalo or Canada coming through Buffalo a month before that. And Canada took some of my guns, right? I'm going to carry. I have an individual right. I don't even think that the Supreme Court is that I get the process, but I still have an individual right. If I'm not violating somebody else's body or the body in me or the property, no one has jurisdiction over me at all.
Yeah.
I'm going to maneuver as such. Now, I don't even think, not only does the general public not know what happened because they aren't aware of the systems of checks and balances and what the SCOTUS is supposed to do.
Yep.
They absolutely don't know that Roe v. Wade was based on an absolute lie.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that this lady was like, oh, I got raped by a bunch of black dudes. They have no idea that was false. They don't know that she never got the abortion. Like, they don't know any of this. So there's layers and context that is missing so much. And I got to point the finger like at John D. Rockefeller, who did a great job of creating the Department of Education to like make worker bees and not thinkers. You know what I'm saying? Like, but the fact that I even know this is some shit that I got to extend grace to our people, because I go like, damn, bro, you weren't high taking those fucking tours in City Hall with me.
Yeah.
Damn, bro, you wasn't reading these stories like it was fucking Hercules. Like, you wasn't reading the books like it was TV, as we should have been.
Mm-hmm.
The system kind of fucked us over a bit there. You know what I mean? There's a story that I tell often now about when I'm trying to share with people the importance of context. And it's a story of a mother, and she's making a pot roast. She's making the pot roast with her daughter, and she's telling her daughter, this is our age old, like, this is why we make the pot roast. This is why our pot roast is the best pot roast. It's the most delicious pot roast. And the daughter had tasted the pot roast before. She's like, oh man, I'm going to get to learn the secrets of the pot roast. And so the first thing that the mom says is, the first thing you do is you cut the ends off of the pot roast. And the daughter said, quite naturally, well, you know, why do we do that? And the mom said, I don't know. And she said, let me call my mom. Let me call grandmom real quick. So she calls grandmom, and grandmom says, and she says, hey, mom, I'm here with baby girl, and we're making our family pot roast. And I'm cutting off the ends of the pot roast. And baby girl asked, you know, why do we cut the ends off? And I said, hey, I just know that was the way that we always did it. And I figured I'd call you. So the grandmom says, I don't know. And she goes, let me call Big Mama, which is the great-grand's great-grandmom. So she calls, and they're all on the phone. Mom's on speaker, daughter's listening, grandmom is on calling, three-way. And she says, hey, mama, everybody's on the line. It's me, baby girl, grandbaby. Baby girl is, you know, teaching grandbaby about how to make our family pot roast. And baby girl asked, you know, why do we cut the ends off? And, you know, I'm pretty sure, you know, it's what makes our family recipe so delicious and all of this. But we didn't know exactly. So we figured we'd call you on this Sunday and talk to you about why it was done. And the great grandmom said, cut the ends off the pot roast for deliciousness. She said, that's not why I did that. And all of the generations are like, well, why do you cut the pot roast off? And she said, when your father, the only pot that he could afford at that time when we had pot roast was a very small pot, and it wouldn't fit the first pot roast that he got. So for years I had to cut the ends off because it wouldn't fit. Now, they've made up every story about how it's so delicious and this is a part of their recipe, and nobody stopped to get the actual context. The reality is this is generations of meat wasted because nobody knew the actual context. All of these people that are currently talking about they're American, they're patriots, they are willing to fight. These are the same people that just say back to blue no matter what, vote blue no matter who. You're missing so much context because you don't read. These are the same people as conservatives that'll say weed is wrong, America, 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 moral upstanding. But the founding fathers, a lot of them had fucking hemp farms. Philadelphia was started as William Penn was like, this is going to be like the epicenter of freedom. Women have rights here. People can vote here. Religious freedom. That's in the middle of a Judeo-Christian space. That's what Philadelphia was supposed to be created for. William Penn didn't want to go to war with the indigenous people, the Lenape, the I forget the other name of the tribes. That's why he did trade with them. We don't got to fight, bro. We don't got to go to war. Let's just do trade. These are the things that if you haven't studied and if you don't read the actual history, Colonial Williamsburg, John Adams was super lit. And so you're missing so much of the context that you're cutting the fucking Constitution off a little bit by little bit because you don't have a fuller understanding of what this actually means. And I'm usually very critical because the men and women that I look to and sit under and try to learn information from, like I can call Thomas Massey and ask him stuff. Dude's super smart. You know what I'm saying? I can get to Ron Paul or Rand Paul if I, make a couple of texts. And these guys, are like constitutional geniuses, liberty geniuses. And it's almost like you're benefiting from this American experiment with no real appreciation for it because I'm not a person that's going to say America was perfect. No, bro, like I'm Black, I'm African-American. The fucking state did some horrible things to my elders. Yep. That happened. So there's a way to appreciate the good while calling the bad out. But I take it real personal because it's like, bro, in this time, again, we need all hands on deck. And I'm so fake offended that people would pretend to be something that they've put no study into. And it's just, it's stolen honor to me, valor.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. One of the things I love about the pot roast story is one that it involves meat. And every time I hear it, I think, oh man, how good is that pot roast? But the other piece is that the mom and the grandmas and all them, they did the right thing because when the daughter said, why is this the way it is? They said, I don't know. Let's go find out together. Mm-hmm. But what happens today is if you say, is that really true? Or why do we do it that way? You get shut down. People say, well, why don't you, why don't you just fall in line? Why don't you just agree? Why don't you just go along with it? Right. And that's probably what happened in most people's families, just shut up, eat the pot roast. But right. We should be more like the family in the pot roast story because that's a bbig part of it. You got to ask yourself, is that really true? Does that really make sense? Is that really what I should be doing? Like when the guys were taking the knees, at the soccer or the football games or whatever the case is, and protesting the national anthem. And I'm just thinking no, that the anthem is the very thing you want to celebrate. Like the flag is the thing you want to wave. If you're worried about people's liberty and freedom being taken away, or, you should be saying, aren't we supposed to be better than this? Look, the flag says we are, right?
So there's two things to that.
All right.
Did you hear Kaepernick's initial 5 to 10 minute interview where he explained why he was doing it?
No.
Bro, it was the best conversation about liberty I've ever heard in my life.
All right, I'm going to write this down.
Dude, when I say he was a combat vet told him to take the knee. And he was like, listen, I understand at that time when it happened, right? Yeah. Now, before I say this, Kaepernick failed because what he doesn't understand is when you do media, I'll probably have to tell this pot roast story 20 more times, right? In media, somebody will see this podcast and be like, so tell me about the pot roast. Tell our viewers about the pot roast, right? In media, you got to repeat the narrative or your narrative will get hijacked. And I don't think he understood that. He gave this explanation where this was during a time when media was highlighting there was a Black dude getting shot every week by the police, unarmed. And it was even I was I know the media lies, but damn, they can't make these stories up. That's the actual dude that got shot. And it's oh, the police shot a man that was laying on the ground with his hands up because his mentally challenged client that he was taking care of was doing something wild. And the police shot him 3 times.
Yeah.
And so during all of this time, these were all of these back-to-back deaths. Now, what Kaepernick talked to the combat vet about was is this disrespectful to America, to the armed forces, to so forth and so on. And the combat vet was like, no, we fought for your right to highlight and talk about these things that are wrong. In that interview, he actually broke the whole thing down. He said, this isn't about hate for America. This isn't about, he's like, but this is something that I have to use my platform to bring to light. And I was like, oh shit, because that's what protest is about.
Yeah.
It's not about us being comfortable. It's about, like the Boston Tea Party wasn't like a comfortable thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you can insert any armed revolution, civil disobedience, marching. It's not about making the people that want the status quo feel uncomfortable. And so he gave a great breakdown. He made some PR moves after that I just was like, bro, they're going to crucify you. And they hijacked his message. They absolutely did. Then he got quiet. So your message is absolutely completely hijacked. But the kneeling, have you ever heard the third verse of the national anthem?
The third verse?
It's 3 verses.
No, yeah, I don't know if I've read it, heard it or not. I don't know.
The song, because the French appealed to Britain, and those guys appealed to African Americans that were captives to leave and go fight for the British.
That's right. Yeah.
Because they were like fucking captives. So they're like, hey, these guys are giving you captivity. We'll give you freedom if you come fight for us. The guy that wrote that third verse, which never gets played, it was basically like saying, I'm paraphrasing, right? We're going to shoot and kill the blacks that like left to go fight for the British.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Most people don't even fucking.
No, I didn't know that.
Bernard Keys or Keynes, or I forget the dude's name. I mess it up. I always confuse him with the father of propaganda. They
Franklin,
have
not Franklin Scott Key, not that guy.
Keys, that dude.
Okay, yeah.
Bro, wait till you hear the third verse of the song. You're gonna be like, oh shit.
We need to change it. Yeah. Wow.
That's why they never play the third verse. Pot roast story. The third verse is never fucking talked about, right?
Yeah.
And so it seems very American because, like, as I'm talking about this, like the sunlight is coming through the window, right? Like, so the national anthem. So players didn't, up until like mid 2000s, players didn't stand outside for the national anthem in the NFL. The United States Department of Justice started paying the NFL to have them players come out and like stand on the sidelines after they gave him like $4 million or some weird number, right? So he talked to this, combat vet, retired combat vet, and was like, yo, is this disrespectful? And he explained all of this in his interview. But then he started listening to his girlfriend. Then he started doing things that like wearing the socks that had like cops as pigs and stuff like it just didn't help the narrative. But his original thing was, I'm doing this during this time because I want to bring attention to all of these young Black unarmed men that are being murdered by the police. But he failed. And then everybody then it became like super politicized. And then people that were kneeling, it's like, you don't even know what you're kneeling for. You're just like going like, fuck America. I'm going to take a kneel as you like cash $100,000 check. So it was a weird thing. But if you ever watch the full interview, that's why I was like, yo, I'm not doing the kneel thing because I think kneeling is a form of submission. Like I'm from Leonidas and the crew. Like, fuck that. I'm never kneeling. So even in a symbolic gesture, I'm just never doing it. I'd sit down and just not take a knee. But I'm just not going to do that too, because I understand also that I have friends of the special forces that lost. When you go into the military, they condition you. And that flag represents like the unity. And so if you've been conditioned that way and you fought and you have friends that didn't make it back to the bunk, and murdered and died, that hit a little bit different. So I understand, I'm objective, so I understand both sides. But his explanation of it, I thought was amazing, that first interview. And the irony is, after he started doing that, whether police officers stopped killing unarmed people a little bit, was like falling back, or the media just wasn't talking about it as much, we started to see some of the, decrease in that. And that's what I want. Even if I don't agree with you, I want an artist or an athlete. If you guys say you're more than athletes, I do want you to take some harsh positions on things, even if I disagree with it. But knowing the third verse and that part of the national anthem, I'm like, yeah, I absolutely understand why he would pick that song. Mm-hmm. But you would also have to educate people about the third verse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So activism isn't just singular acts. It's an educational process, because if people have more of that context, even if I'm not expecting everybody to take the knee, but they would still go, oh, I could understand that. That's where I'm at. It's like the abortion conversation. Morally, I'm opposed to it, but there's a small percentage. Like if a woman gets really raped, I could understand through that trauma why she would not want to have that child. And so it's that nuance and those contextual issues that these type of long format conversations with a person that's informed about, the thing is what's needed to. The reason why I say these concepts about this Kaepernick thing and the kneeling is because I want the listeners to understand further context, not because I want them to agree with me, because the further context kills some of the extreme polarization.
Yeah.
Where Americans are just fucking fighting Americans. And that part is where I strive to kind of destroy.
No, I think that's great. And that's exactly what we need. And it takes energy. It takes time. You can't focus on 100 different things and also be serious about understanding American history or understanding the context on one particular incident, one thing that's going on. And I think that's really the challenge these days. And it's one of the things that we're trying to educate guys with is look, you have to be intentional about the things that you put your focus into, because you can't focus on everything. And there's going to be a lot of things trying to get your attention that are really just useless. It's nonsense. It's garbage. And if you want to make a difference in the world, you got to be someone who's educated and understands things.
Absolutely.
So from tell me really quickly, as we kind of wrap things up, I know you got a lot of things going on, either through the Black Lives or Black Guns Matter. And I know you use this term solutionary quite a bit. What does that mean?
Solutionary, some people used to say the work that we were doing with Black Guns Matter was revolutionary. And there's two things to that word. When you're talking about an actual revolution, revolutions are very bloody. Mm-hmm. Like the American Revolution was the Revolutionary War. It's not, people gonna fucking die. And I don't think most Americans are built for that right now. We comfortable. We got fucking air conditioning and steaks. Even through the pandemic, that shit wasn't China's pandemic. It was they were Chinese people were get the fuck in the house. And if you come out, we're absolutely going to beat you with batons. Right. So revolution is a very strong word. And the root word, I'm a fan of etymology. If you guys that are listening, everyone should have an etymological dictionary to understand the etymology of a word. Did it come from Latin? What is the root? What is the meaning of the root? Revolution, the root word is revolve. Like the earth, unless you're a flat earther, right? The earth revolves around the sun. And hey, if you guys, I just picked up a book by this Admiral Byrd that I'm kind of I absolutely see where these flat earthers are getting this shit from. But whole nother thing, why hasn't no one went to Antarctica? Just questions. And I'm no, this shit is kind of creepy. But nonetheless, the earth revolves around. Guys, the earth is round. I'm telling you guys.
We've seen other planets. You can look at them. You can buy a telescope and see them yourself.
Come on. So, but I just kind of give everybody their thing, right? But if you're a round earther, the earth revolves around the sun. It's fixed. It doesn't really go anywhere other than the place that it's been 1,000 bajillion times. I don't think we need to revolve around the same issues. Mm-hmm. As a solutionary, we find out what the actual problem is. We find the solution. Okay, that didn't work. Try another one. We get the solution, we move on. We don't have to talk about this. We don't want to be revolving around this concept a bunch. And so solutionaries are that people that recognize the problem. We don't spend too much time on complaining about the problem. We apply solutions, find the one that works. We keep ourselves open to a solution that may be more refined than the one that we apply. And we just do that. And if we do this successfully, we shouldn't have this conversation. Like, if the zombie apocalypse happens and globally, and we got to start this whole thing over again, and we got remnants of the Constitution, I'm pretty sure that guys are going to be, and women are going to be very specific about the Second Amendment. We're going to include fucking rate of fire. We're going to include, like, all of these things that, like, those dudes were like, hey, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And they're like, that was the double down from the Constitution.
Yep.
Like, the Bill of Rights was that. I'm pretty sure those guys were like, dude, there's no way that people, it wasn't even a thought. People are going to be this stupid in the future. But if they are, this is our double down in the Bill of Rights. Now, if the zombie apocalypse happens again, we're going to be like, hey, guys, the Second Amendment will be like 4 pages.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It'll be, so the solution may need to be more thorough and more detailed. So solutionaries keep ourselves open to more refined and more detailed, nuanced and contextual solutions that make everything better for us. So when we recognize that, urban communities were being targeted or have been targeted by the racist practice of gun control, that's where we put our work. We said, we're going to make this demographic be the largest gun buying demographic in America. We did that in under 3 years because we were just focused on a solution. You mentioned earlier about PragerU. I think Dennis Prager is a genius. He's a really smart dude.
Yep.
But I do think the funding and getting the left versus right thing, they're getting them clicks. And so I think the allure of that can be very dangerous, and you got to be very careful there. So for us, it's more about, like, we've struggled. It took us, our initial goal was $25,000 and we kept incrementally increasing the goal, but it shouldn't have taken us years to fundraise and give away $1 million. You know what I'm saying? With all of the good work that we do. But again, this is the 3% conversation. There's 3% of the people that's really, willing to really put that work in. And you could get more resources by appealing to the hate in the hearts of men.
Yeah.
And for us, that's never the solution. You get more of the solution by, it's the Warren Buffett shit. Like, bro, we invest in long-term. You know what I'm saying? We invested in this America thing long-term. And so for us, the solution has always been, education, not over legislation, safe and responsible firearms ownership, and just getting people involved in that civic process that gives them not only just that immediate jolt, but also they can, down the road, they're thinking, they understand why this is very important. So that's in essence what it means to be a solutionary.
Well, and one of the things I love about that is very in line with our mission as well with Wolf and Iron. But one of the things I love about that is that kind of approach will make a generational impact, multi-generational impact. And you'll have your own version of a roast story, but it'll be something else. Mom, Why do we own firearms? Well, let me tell you the story about Maj, whatever the case is, right? It'll be different. And that's a generational impact. That's actually making a change for the betterment of people's lives. Whereas a lot of these people, the clickbait stuff, one, you're not making an impact at all if you're arguing about left versus right. You're just playing the game. And you can choose not to play the game. People listening to this, watching this, you can choose not to play the game, and you can spend your time doing things that are more intentional. So,
absolutely.
Man, I really appreciate you. I've learned a lot actually just by talking to you, and we didn't even scratch the surface. I got like 10 other questions here, but I'm like, I'm gonna hold off for another time. How can people find out about, what you've got going on, keep in touch with you, follow along, and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, everybody can sign up. All of our classes at the Solutionary Center are free. When we travel abroad for the firearms classes, those are free as well. We're able to do this completely by voluntary donations. People just individually saying, I want to support that. No taxes, no like strong arming, no like theft. Just people just going like, hey, I want to support that. And the website is solutionarylifestyle.org.
Okay.
Anybody that's listening to this, we got like $470,000 more to raise. That's going to be for buying our building outright, as well as handling our classes. So if you're one of those rich dudes or women that's listening to this right now, like if you want to just donate it, we are a nonprofit. Yeah, that'll be cool. And like, we'll figure out a way to like make that very beneficial for you too. You know, or if you like kind of rich, you like at $10 million and you just want to donate. If I could get 5 like $100,000 donors, that'll be great. So rich people that are listening, check out our work and how we've done over the last few. And even if not, if you got $5 and you're just like, yo, I like what they talking about, like, let's support it. That's solutionarylifestyle.org. And that you can also register for the classes here and in Philadelphia and abroad. We have a class coming up July the 28th. Well, by the time this airs, it might be past that. But we just got classes all over the place. And if you just want to give and you don't want to like go to a class, givesendgo.com/solutionary. And our merch, that amazing Make Politicians Afraid Again shirt, is from blackgunsmattershop.com. And all of these are just different areas that we figure out a way to use the money to support the work. That's just pretty much it, man. And it's been a great journey. And outside of that, if you're going through something, man, there's like 22 vets that like commit suicide a lot, like, you know, in a short period of time. If you're going through something, even if you're not a vet, man, email me, solutionarylifestyle@gmail.com. Like, I'd rather talk to you about your crazy like ex-wife or your crazy ex-husband. I'd rather talk to you about that than like read your obituary. I'm super like down to earth. Send me your phone number, man. Let's chop it up about like life and like why you should actually continue. You know what I'm saying? I respect your right. If you want to kill yourself, you have that right. It's your body, it's your property. But I believe that if you really sit down and talk about it for a while, you'll recognize how much beauty this life is going to be for you. We live in America, like not for nothing. We like still kind of live in like the best time in the best place, like that, like as someone that has went to other countries, and I'm like, if I had to re-up, like I'm re-upping on America like every year, like no bullshit. And so, you know, email me, solutionarylifestyle@gmail.com. I appreciate you. I care for you as a human. You know, let's just be kind to each other, man. Don't be shitty. You know, so again, support the work, givesendgo.com/solutionary. And let's just be really, really nice to each other, man. Be good for nothing. You know what I'm saying? And that's it.
That's it, man. I love it. I love it. And yeah, guys, go check out the merch, especially wearing shirts like this is going to teach you who in your neighborhood like gets along with you and thinks like you. Cause they'll take them a moment to read it and they'll go, hey man, nice shirt. Right. And it'll be people that you don't expect. And that's what I love about it. It's just across the board. It's not a political statement. People who get it, get it. You know, and you got a lot of great stuff out there, man. So I appreciate you, Maj. Thanks again, man, for being on the podcast.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. Peace.
Well, there you have it, men. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. Feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media networks. And look, if you got something out of this, make sure another guy does too. Share the episode and make sure it gets in front of the guys that need to hear it the most. Until next time, keep your powder dry, and may a fair wind be always in your sails.